The Pallava Empire, a detailed historical study. 1. Introduction. The Pallava Empire, a formidable force in South Indian history, flourished between the 3rd and 9th centuries CE, leaving an indelible mark on the cultural, architectural, and political landscape of the region. With their capital at Kanchipuram, the Pallavas played a significant role in the development of Dravidian art and architecture, especially through the creation of grand temples and rock-cut monuments. The dynasty's patronage of religion, literature, and the arts contributed immensely to the South Indian cultural renaissance. The Pallava period is characterized by a distinctive fusion of Tamil and Sanskrit cultures. Their inscriptions were written in both languages, and they played a key role in the evolution of the Grantha script, which became instrumental in the transmission of Sanskrit in the Tamil-speaking region. Kanchipuram, often referred to as the City of 1,000 Temples, emerged as a major center of learning, spirituality, and architecture under the Pallavas. Scholars, poets, and philosophers thrived under royal patronage, and the region saw a vibrant intellectual life that attracted visitors from across India and abroad. The Pallavas were not only skilled administrators and military strategists, but also visionary builders. Their rock-cut and structural temples, especially in Mahabalipuram and Kanchipuram, laid the foundation for the Dravidian architectural style that was later perfected by the Cholas and other dynasties. These architectural achievements reflect their commitment to religion and art, as well as their political ambition to project imperial authority through monumental constructions. The origins of the Pallavas remain a topic of scholarly debate, with various theories proposing connections to northern dynasties, indigenous Tamil roots, or even links with the Satavahanas. Some historical accounts suggest that the Pallavas were initially vassals under the Satavahana rule, and later rose to prominence as the Satavahana power waned. Others argue that they were a local Tamil power that gradually expanded its influence through military prowess and diplomatic alliances. Despite these uncertainties, their political and cultural achievements are well documented through inscriptions, temple architecture, and literary sources, offering a vivid picture of a dynamic and resilient dynasty. This comprehensive study delves into the intricate history of the Pallava Empire, examining its political trajectory, administrative mechanisms, cultural ethos, and enduring legacy. By exploring these dimensions, we aim to provide a nuanced understanding of one of South India's most influential dynasties, whose contributions shaped the subcontinent's history for centuries to come. Origin and rise. The origin of the Pallava dynasty is one of the most debated aspects of South Indian history. Multiple theories exist, each offering a unique perspective on the emergence of the Pallavas as a significant political force. One prominent theory suggests that the Pallavas were originally feudatories under the Satavahanas, gaining power as the latter declined. As the Satavahana Empire disintegrated in the late 2nd and early 3rd centuries CE, regional chieftains and smaller dynasties began asserting independence. The Pallavas likely emerged during this time, consolidating their position in the northern Tamil region and southern Andhra Pradesh. Another theory, based on Tamil literary and epigraphic sources, posits that the Pallavas were indigenous Tamil rulers who gradually expanded their influence. This theory emphasizes their early Tamil inscriptions and their strong presence in Tamil-speaking regions, especially Kanchipuram, which later became their capital. Some scholars also argue for a North Indian or Naga origin, citing similarities in names and titles with northern dynasties. However, this theory lacks concrete archaeological or epigraphic evidence. The earliest known Pallava ruler is Narasimhavarman I, who is mentioned in a Prakrit inscription at Manchikalu in Andhra Pradesh, dated to the 3rd century CE. His successors, including Sivaskandavarman, began expanding their territory and influence. Sivaskandavarman's reign marks the beginning of significant Pallava expansion and consolidation, as evidenced by his extensive land grants and patronage of Brahmanical institutions. By the 4th and 5th centuries CE, the Pallavas had established a stable kingdom, with Kanchipuram as a key center of political and cultural activity. Their strategic position allowed them to control important trade routes and interact with various cultures, facilitating their rise as a dominant power in South India. This phase of rise and consolidation set the stage for the golden age of the Pallavas under rulers like Mahendravarman I and Narasimhavarman I, whose reigns would usher in an era of architectural brilliance and military success. 3. Political history. The political history of the Pallava Empire spans nearly 6 centuries, marked by dynamic leadership, military engagements, and territorial expansion. The dynasty produced several notable rulers who played crucial roles in shaping the political landscape of South India. Early phase. The early phase of Pallava rule, starting with Simhavarman I and extending through rulers like Sivaskandavarman and Vishnugopa, was characterized by regional consolidation. During this time, the Pallavas came into conflict with the Gupta Empire, especially during the reign of Samudragupta. The Allahabad pillar inscription of Samudragupta mentions the defeat of Vishnugopa, highlighting the Pallavas' significance even in early stages. Mahendravarman I, c. 600-630 CE. A turning point in Pallava history came with Mahendravarman I, a polymath and patron of the arts. He shifted from Jainism to Shaivism and promoted temple construction in the Dravidian style. His reign witnessed the beginnings of rock-cut architecture at places like Mahendravadi and Mandagapattu. Politically, he faced constant threats from the Chalukyas, especially Pulakesana II, leading to frequent warfare. Narasimhavarman I, c. 636-68 CE. One of the greatest rulers of the dynasty, Narasimhavarman I, also known as Mamala, successfully repulsed the Chalukya invasion and even captured their capital Vatapi, modern Badami, earning the title Vatapi Konda. His reign marked the zenith of Pallava power. He commissioned the famous shore temple and monolithic rathas at Mahabalipuram, which reflect the dynasty's architectural excellence. Post-Narasimhavarman I era, his successors, including Mahendravarman II and Paramasvaravarman I, maintained the kingdom's prestige, although they faced renewed Chalukya aggression. Paramasvaravarman I defended the territory successfully and continued his father's cultural patronage. Narasimhavarman II, Rajasima c. 778 CE. Narasimhavarman II, also known as Rajasima, was another outstanding Pallava ruler. He continued the legacy of architectural patronage by constructing the Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram, a masterpiece of Dravidian architecture. His reign also saw increased diplomatic and cultural contacts with Southeast Asia. Late phase and decline. The later Pallavas faced increasing challenges from emerging powers like the Pandyas, Rashtrakutas, and the rising Cholas. The reign of Nandivarman II, c. 731-796 CE, witnessed internal strife and external threats, though he managed to hold the kingdom together. However, the dynasty's power gradually waned. The final blow came in the 9th century CE, when the Cholas under Aditya Furin decisively defeated the Pallavas. Their territories were absorbed, and the once glorious dynasty came to an end, though their cultural and architectural contributions lived on through succeeding South Indian kingdoms. Administrative system. The administrative system of the Pallava Empire was highly organized and efficient, reflecting the dynasty's commitment to good governance and centralized control. The Pallavas developed a complex bureaucratic structure that balanced royal authority with local autonomy. Central administration. At the apex of the administration was the king, who held supreme authority in matters of state, justice, and military affairs. The Pallava kings took titles such as Maharaja and Dharma Maharaja, signifying their role as both political rulers and upholders of Dharma, moral and religious order. The king was assisted by a council of ministers, Amatyas, who advised him on various aspects of governance. These officials included the Sandhi Vigrahika, Minister for War and Peace, Mahasandhi Vigrahika, Chief Minister, and other secretaries and scribes who managed different departments. Provincial and local administration. The empire was divided into various administrative units known as kotams or vishayas, districts, which were further subdivided into nadus, sub-districts, and villages. Each unit had its own set of officials responsible for maintaining law and order, collecting taxes, and overseeing public works. Village assemblies, known as sabhas, played a crucial role in local governance. These assemblies were composed of elders and respected members of the community who made decisions on land grants, irrigation, disputes, and temple affairs. The Sabha was a powerful institution, especially in Tamil regions, and reflected a form of participatory governance. Revenue system. The Pallavas had a well-structured revenue system with land tax, karai, being the main source of income. Lands were carefully surveyed and classified according to fertility and productivity. Other sources of revenue included taxes on trade, tolls, and tribute from vassal states. Inscriptions reveal that land grants were made to Brahmins and temples, often exempting them from certain taxes. These grants served both religious and political purposes, securing the loyalty of influential religious institutions. Judicial system. The king was the highest judicial authority, but local disputes were usually resolved at the village level. Village assemblies often acted as judicial bodies, and their decisions were respected. Inscriptions mention various legal terms and references to customary laws that governed social and economic life. The Pallavas maintained law and order through a network of local officials and soldiers. Punishments for crimes ranged from fines and confiscation to corporal punishment, depending on the nature of the offense. Military organization. The Pallava military was well organized, with a standing army supported by feudal levies. It included infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. The king personally led military campaigns and maintained a corps of elite warriors. Forts and outposts were established to defend strategic locations. The military played a key role not just in defense but also in expanding Pallava influence across South India and into Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia. Society and economy. The society and economy of the Pallava Empire were complex and dynamic, shaped by diverse cultural influences, economic interactions, and social hierarchies. The Pallava period was marked by both continuity and change, as traditional structures evolved in response to new political and cultural developments. Social structure. Pallava society was hierarchical and largely based on the Varna, caste system. The Brahmins occupied the highest position, enjoying privileges in religious, educational, and administrative spheres. They were often the recipients of land grants and played a crucial role in temple rituals and scholarly pursuits. The Kshatriyas, or warrior class, included the royal family and nobility, who were responsible for governance and defense. Below them were the Vaishyas, comprising merchants and artisans who contributed significantly to the economic life of the empire. The Shudras, primarily agricultural laborers and service providers, formed the base of the social pyramid. Apart from these four Varnas, there were various occupational groups and tribal communities, some of whom were integrated into the mainstream, while others lived on the fringes of society. Women generally had a subordinate position, although some inscriptions and literary sources suggest that women of the upper classes were educated and participated in religious and cultural life. Religious life. The Pallava period was a time of religious pluralism and transformation. Hinduism, especially Shaivism and Vaishnavism, was the dominant faith with extensive temple building and ritual practices. The kings often identified themselves as devotees of Shiva or Vishnu and sponsored temple construction and festivals. Buddhism and Jainism also had a presence, particularly in the early Pallava period. Mahendravarman I was initially a Jain before converting to Shaivism, and Jain monks received patronage alongside Hindu priests. Kanchipuram housed Buddhist monasteries and Jain temples, making it a hub of interreligious dialogue. Temples were not just religious centers but also social and economic institutions. They owned land, employed artisans and laborers, and served as centers of education and charity. Temple inscriptions often record donations, land grants, and the activities of various community members. Education and culture. Education was highly valued, especially among the Brahmin and upper classes. Gurukulas and temple schools imparted knowledge in grammar, philosophy, astronomy, medicine, and the arts. Kanchipuram emerged as a renowned center of learning, attracting scholars from far and wide. The Pallavas were great patrons of literature, supporting both Tamil and Sanskrit works. Court poets and scholars composed hymns, dramas, and philosophical treatises. The influence of the Bhakti movement, emphasizing personal devotion to God, began to spread during this period through the works of Alvars and Nayanmars. Economic activities. Agriculture formed the backbone of the Pallava economy. The fertile plains of Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh supported the cultivation of rice, millet, sugarcane, and cotton. Irrigation systems, including tanks and canals, were developed to enhance agricultural productivity. Trade and commerce flourished both internally and externally. The Pallava ports, such as Mahabalipuram, were bustling centers of maritime trade, linking South India with Southeast Asia, China, and the Middle East. Goods like spices, textiles, ivory, and precious stones were exported, while imports included horses, metals, and luxury items. Artisans and craftsmen played a vital role in the economy, producing textiles, metalware, pottery, and sculptures. Guilds regulated their activities, ensured quality, and sometimes acted as banking institutions. Taxation was systematic, with revenue collected from land, trade, and professional services. Inscriptions provide detailed records of tax rates, exemptions, and the management of revenue. Art and architecture. The Pallava period represents a golden age in the history of South Indian art and architecture. The Dynasties' contributions laid the foundation for the Dravidian style, which would later be perfected by the Cholas and other South Indian dynasties. Pallava rulers, particularly Mahendravarman I, Narasimhavarman I, Mamala, and Narasimhavarman II, Rajasimha, were great patrons of architecture and sculpture. Early rock-cut architecture. The earliest phase of Pallava architecture is marked by rock-cut caves, influenced by Buddhist architectural traditions but adapted for Hindu religious themes. These structures were created by scooping out solid rock to form pillared halls with sanctums and relief sculptures. Mahendravarman I initiated the construction of cave temples, the earliest examples being at Mandagapattu, Mahendravadi, and Dalavanur. These temples were primarily dedicated to Shiva and Vishnu, and featured simple pillared halls and linga sanctuaries. Mahendravarman's inscription at Mandagapattu proclaims the creation of a temple not made of brick, timber, metal, or mortar. Mahabalipuram monuments. Under Narasimhavarman I, the art and architecture of the Pallavas reached new heights. Mahabalipuram, a coastal town near Kanchipuram, became the focal point of architectural innovation. Pancharathas. These 5 monolithic temples carved from single granite rocks resemble chariots, rathas. Each ratha is dedicated to a different deity and showcases unique architectural features. Though they were never consecrated, they reflect experimentation in temple design and iconography. Cave temples. Mahabalipuram houses several cave temples like the Varaha Cave, Mahishasuramardini Cave, and Krishna Mandapa, which contain intricate bas-reliefs depicting Hindu mythology. The Krishna Mandapa, for example, illustrates Krishna lifting the Govardhana hill, descent of the Ganges, Arjuna's penance. This massive open-air rock relief is one of the largest in the world. It depicts the descent of the sacred river Ganga from the heavens, assisted by Bhagirath, with accompanying celestial beings, animals, and sages. The artistic composition is dynamic and naturalistic. Shore Temple, built by Narasimhavarman II, Rajasima. The Shore Temple is one of the earliest structural stone temples in South India. It is dedicated to both Shiva and Vishnu, and stands as a symbol of the Pallava maritime legacy. The temple's pyramidal towers and sculpted panels are masterpieces of early Dravidian style. Kanchipuram temples. Kanchipuram, the Pallava capital, also witnessed extensive temple construction. Narasimhavarman II was responsible for building the Kailasanatha temple, considered the pinnacle of Pallava architectural achievement. Kailasanatha temple. This sandstone temple is an early example of a fully developed Dravidian temple with a pyramidal vimana, tower, and a rectangular sanctum. Its outer walls are adorned with numerous miniature shrines and beautifully carved sculptures depicting various forms of Shiva. The temple features a pradakshina patha, circumambulatory path around the sanctum, and rich iconographic details. Vaikuntha Perumal Temple. Built by Nandivarman II, this temple is dedicated to Vishnu and features 3 sanctums representing the deity in standing, sitting, and reclining postures. It demonstrates an evolution toward more complex multi-level temple plans. Sculpture and iconography. Pallava sculpture is renowned for its grace, realism, and expressiveness. The artists paid great attention to anatomical precision, emotion, and movement. Common themes included deities like Shiva, Vishnu, Durga, Ganesha, and scenes from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. The sculptures at Mahabalipuram and Kanchipuram exhibit a refined aesthetic, with figures depicted in dynamic poses, flowing garments, and detailed ornaments. The emphasis on narrative reliefs like the descent of the Ganges shows an inclination towards storytelling through stone, painting, and decorative arts. Although Pallava painting has largely been lost, traces of mural work have been found in temple niches and rock-cut shrines. These remnants suggest a vibrant tradition of mural painting, similar in style to the earlier Ajanta frescoes. Decorative arts flourished under the Pallavas. Temple ceilings, doorways, and pillars were richly adorned with carvings and motifs, often using floral patterns, mythical creatures, and divine figures. Metal sculptures and bronze casting may also have been practiced, though most surviving examples date from later Chola times. Influence and legacy. The artistic legacy of the Pallavas had a profound impact on South and Southeast Asian architecture. Their architectural innovations inspired temple construction in Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Indonesia. The Pallava style, particularly as seen in Mahabalipuram, served as a prototype for later developments in Chola, Pandya, and Hoysala architecture. Pallava art and architecture represent a synthesis of indigenous Tamil styles and broader Indian artistic traditions. Their emphasis on monumental temple construction and sculptural excellence helped lay the foundation for centuries of architectural innovation in southern India. Literature and education. The Pallava Empire was not only known for its political and architectural achievements, but also for its significant contributions to literature and education. The period witnessed a vibrant literary culture in both Sanskrit and Tamil, as well as the promotion of scholarly learning, education institutions, and patronage of poets and philosophers. Patronage of Sanskrit literature. The Pallavas were ardent patrons of Sanskrit, which was the language of administration, high culture, and religious discourse. Many Pallava kings were themselves accomplished scholars and writers. Mahendravarman I, for instance, authored the Sanskrit play Madhavilasa Prahasana, a satirical farce that criticizes religious hypocrisy and reflects contemporary social issues. It is one of the earliest examples of secular Sanskrit drama in South India. Narasimhavarman I and II continued the tradition of supporting Sanskrit literature. Court poets and scholars composed works on various subjects, including theology, grammar, poetics, and philosophy. This patronage attracted Brahmin scholars and religious teachers from across India, turning the Pallava court into a major center of learning. Tamil literature and Bhakti movement. Simultaneously, the Tamil language flourished under the Pallavas, especially with the rise of the Bhakti movement. The Nayanmars, devotees of Shiva, and Alvars, devotees of Vishnu, composed devotional hymns in Tamil, celebrating their personal experiences with the divine and promoting a direct, emotional form of worship. The Bhakti poets played a crucial role in popularizing temple worship, challenging ritualistic orthodoxy, and making religious expression accessible to all social classes. The verses of Apar Sambandar Sundarar Shaivite saints and Periyalvar Namalvar Andal Vaishnavite saints emerged during this time or slightly after, but their spiritual milieu was shaped by the earlier Pallava environment. Inscriptions and epigraphy. The Pallava rulers were pioneers in using inscriptions for administrative and religious purposes. Their inscriptions are found in both Sanskrit, using the Grantha script, and Tamil, using early Tamil script. These inscriptions, carved on stone and copper plates, record land grants, donations to temples, and royal edicts. The earliest use of the Grantha script, which was developed under the Pallavas, helped standardize the writing of Sanskrit in southern India. The Tamil script also evolved significantly during this period, becoming more formalized and suitable for literary composition. Educational institutions and centers of learning. The Pallava period saw the establishment of numerous centers of learning, particularly attached to temples. Kanchipuram, the capital, emerged as a prominent intellectual hub, attracting students and scholars from different regions. Kanchipuram, known as the City of Thousand Temples, Kanchipuram was also a center for Vedic learning, philosophy, and religious studies. It hosted institutions that taught the Vedas, Upanishads, Mimamsa, Nyaya, and grammar. Buddhist and Jain learning centers also thrived alongside Hindu ones in earlier centuries. Monastic schools. Many temples served as ghatikas, centers of higher learning, where students studied under the guidance of gurus. These ghatikas were predecessors to later medieval universities like Nalanda and Vikramashila in northern India. Interaction with other cultures. The Pallava emphasis on education and learning facilitated cultural exchanges with other countries. Their maritime trade links and diplomatic missions contributed to the spread of Indian literature and philosophical ideas to Southeast Asia. Sanskrit texts and Hindu-Buddhist philosophical ideas reached kingdoms like Cambodia, Vietnam, and Java through Pallava influence. Buddhist scholars like Bodhidharma, who is believed to have originated from Kanchipuram, traveled to China and contributed to the development of Zen Buddhism. Religious and philosophical literature. Philosophical debates and religious treatises were common at the Pallava court. The interaction among Shaivites, Vaishnavites, Buddhists, and Jains enriched intellectual life. Though Shaivism and Vaishnavism were dominant, the environment was generally tolerant of heterodox beliefs. Shaivite agamas and Vaishnavite Pancharatra texts were composed and propagated during this time, influencing temple rituals and religious practices. Conclusion. The Pallava era marks a significant chapter in the literary and educational history of South India. Their dual promotion of Sanskrit and Tamil, their nurturing of the Bhakti movement, and their establishment of learning centers left a lasting legacy. This cultural efflorescence not only shaped the Tamil literary tradition, but also contributed to the broader Indian intellectual heritage. Religion and philosophy. Religion played a central role in the life and governance of the Pallava Empire. The Pallava rulers were devout Hindus and enthusiastic patrons of religious institutions. However, their reign was also marked by religious tolerance, with evidence of patronage extended to Jainism and Buddhism, especially in the earlier stages of their rule. The period saw the flourishing of religious practices, sectarian movements, temple rituals, and philosophical schools. Shaivism and Vaishnavism. Shaivism, the worship of Lord Shiva, was the predominant religious tradition during the Pallava period. Many temples built by the Pallavas were dedicated to Shiva, and the royal family often identified themselves as ardent Shaivites. The influence of Shaiva Siddhanta, a school of Shaiva theology and philosophy, was significant during this period. Narasimhavarman I and his successors patronized Shaivism extensively. Temples like the Kailasanatha temple in Kanchipuram are masterpieces of Shaivite devotion. The inscriptions and sculptures found in these temples depict various forms of Shiva, including Nataraja, Lord of Dance, Dakshinamurti, the cosmic teacher, and Lingodbhava, emergence from the linga. Vaishnavism also enjoyed royal support, especially under later Pallava rulers. The Vaikuntha Perumal temple in Kanchipuram, dedicated to Lord Vishnu, is an example of Pallava Vaishnavite architecture. The Alvar saints, through their Tamil hymns, spread the philosophy of surrender and devotion to Vishnu, Jainism and Buddhism. Jainism and Buddhism, though gradually declining during this period, continued to receive support in some regions under the Pallavas. Early Pallava kings like Mahendravarman I, before converting to Shaivism, are believed to have been patrons of Jainism. Jain cave temples like those found at Sittanavasal and sculptures of Tirthankaras in Tamil Nadu indicate the presence of a vibrant Jain community. Buddhism had an older presence in Tamilakam, and Pallava kings maintained friendly ties with Buddhist centers. Notably, Bodhidharma, the famed monk who transmitted Zen Chan Buddhism to China, is believed to have come from the Pallava region, possibly Kanchipuram, temple worship and rituals. The Pallavas played a critical role in shaping the South Indian temple culture. With their encouragement, temples evolved from being simple shrines into elaborate religious complexes. These temples became the centers of ritualistic worship, spiritual instruction, cultural activities, and social organization. Elaborate daily rituals, pujas, festivals, processions, and ceremonies were institutionalized in temple life. Priests were appointed and rituals were codified in accordance with the agamas, Shaivite and Vaishnavite canonical texts. Temple music, dance, and drama also developed during this period, contributing to the cultural enrichment of the region. Philosophical movements. The Pallava period witnessed the growth of diverse philosophical schools and theological discourses. Key traditions included Shaiva Siddhanta, a systematic school of Shaivite theology that elaborated on metaphysics, cosmology, rituals, and soteriology. It emphasized devotion to Shiva as the supreme being, and the goal of achieving liberation, moksha, through grace, devotion, and knowledge. Vaishnava philosophy, early foundations of Vishishtadvaita, qualified non-dualism, which would be systematized later by Ramanuja, were present in the devotional teachings of the Alvars. The concept of surrender, prapatti, and the loving relationship between the soul and Vishnu were key themes. Advaita and other darshanas, the Upanishadic and Vedantic philosophies were studied in Pallava learning centers. The seeds of Advaita Vedanta, non-dualism, later fully developed by Adi Shankaracharya, were present in the philosophical discourses of the time. Nyaya, Mimamsa, and Samkhya. These classical schools of Hindu philosophy were also studied by scholars. Mimamsa's emphasis on ritual, Nyaya's logic, and Samkhya's metaphysics were debated in intellectual circles. Role of saints and teachers. The religious landscape of the Pallava period was enriched by the presence of saint poets, ascetics, and scholars. The Bhakti movement, with its emphasis on personal devotion and rejection of caste-based exclusivity, found fertile ground during this time. Nayanmars. Saints like Apar, Sambandar, and Sundarar composed hymns in praise of Shiva, promoting a deeply emotional and inclusive form of worship. Their verses, later compiled in the Tirumarai, became sacred scriptures for Tamil Shaivites. Alvars. Saints like Namalvar and Andal composed hymns celebrating Vishnu and his avatars. Their poetry, later compiled as the Divya Prabandham, inspired devotional Vaishnavism, tolerance, and syncretism. Despite their personal affiliations, the Pallava kings demonstrated a remarkable degree of religious tolerance. Temples of multiple sects coexisted, and inscriptions show that endowments were made to different religious communities. Philosophical debates were encouraged, and the intellectual climate remained open to diverse perspectives. This syncretism helped create a rich and pluralistic religious culture in the Tamil region, where different traditions not only coexisted, but often influenced each other. Conclusion. Religion and philosophy under the Pallavas shaped the spiritual and cultural ethos of South India. Their patronage of temples, support for Bhakti saints, and encouragement of philosophical inquiry laid the foundation for subsequent religious developments in the region. The harmonious coexistence of multiple traditions during this period stands as a testament to the inclusive spirit of Pallava rule, administration, and governance. The Pallava Empire was characterized by a well-structured and efficient administrative system that allowed it to maintain political stability and economic prosperity across its territories. The governance model combined central authority with a degree of regional autonomy, and it laid down the foundations for administrative practices that would influence later South Indian dynasties like the Cholas and the Vijayanagar Empire. Central administration. At the apex of the administrative hierarchy was the Pallava king, who held supreme authority in matters of governance, justice, military, and religion. The king was regarded not only as a temporal ruler, but also as a dharmic upholder and a representative of divine will on earth. The king was assisted by a council of ministers, Mantri Parishad, comprising high officials who advised him on state affairs. These included the prime minister, Mahamatya, treasurer, Bandagarika, chief priest, Rajaguru, and military commander, Dandanayaka. Royal decrees were issued through inscriptions, often in both Sanskrit and Tamil, and were implemented by local officials. The capital city, Kanchipuram, served as the administrative, cultural, and religious nerve center of the empire. Provincial and local administration. The Pallava kingdom was divided into several provinces or kotams, each governed by a kotamadhikari or regional governor, usually a royal appointee. These provinces were further divided into subdivisions like nadus, kurams, and grams, villages, where local administration was conducted. Nadu, a large administrative division usually encompassing a cluster of villages. Kuram, a smaller subdivision within a nadu. Gram, The basic administrative unit, the village, which had considerable autonomy in managing its own affairs. Each administrative unit had officials responsible for tax collection, maintaining law and order, supervising irrigation, and implementing royal orders. Village administration and self-governance. One of the hallmarks of Pallava administration was the prominence given to village assemblies, sabhas and UR, especially in Brahmadaya, Brahmin-settled villages, or a general village assembly comprising male adult residents of non-Brahmin villages. It managed local resources, resolved disputes, and oversaw development activities. Sabha, a more specialized assembly found in Brahmadaya villages. It consisted of learned Brahmins who were elected or selected based on qualifications such as knowledge of the Vedas, honesty, and age. The Sabha had standing committees, varyams, responsible for different aspects like justice, irrigation, garden maintenance, education, and temple affairs. These village institutions had written constitutions and kept meticulous records. Decisions were recorded in inscriptions, and land grants and taxes were carefully documented. Revenue and taxation system. Revenue collection was the backbone of the Pallava administration. The primary source of income was land revenue, levied on agricultural produce. Land tax, karai, levied as a portion of the crop yield usually collected in kind. The rate varied depending on soil fertility, irrigation facilities, and crop type. Customs duties, levied on trade goods, especially at ports and commercial centers. Tributes and gifts, collected from feudatories and allied chiefs. Temple endowments. While not direct state income, temples received land and wealth that were often reinvested into the local economy, benefiting the region indirectly. Tax administration was handled by village officials like the Kanakar, accountant, Manradi, revenue officer, and Karnam, scribe. Judicial system. Justice during the Pallava period was dispensed at both the royal and local levels. The king was the highest judicial authority and decided on appeals in capital cases. However, local disputes were usually resolved within the village assembly or by temple authorities. Punishments varied from fines and public shaming to physical penalties depending on the gravity of the crime. The law was based on Dharma Shastra, customary practices, and royal edicts. Military administration. The Pallava military was a well-organized force composed of infantry, cavalry, elephants, and chariots. The standing army was maintained by the state, while feudal lords contributed troops during wartime. Infantry and cavalry formed the bulk of the army. Cavalry was considered elite and was often recruited from regions like Cambodia, war elephants used for shock value and to break enemy lines. Navy. Though not very prominent, the Pallavas did maintain maritime power to protect their ports and trade routes. Military commanders held ranks and titles, and some were assigned administrative duties in provinces or border regions. Diplomatic relations and treaties. The Pallavas engaged in diplomatic relations with both northern Indian kingdoms and Southeast Asian polities. Inscriptions suggest that diplomatic envoys and cultural exchanges were conducted with Sri Lanka, the Chalukyas, the Kadambas, and Southeast Asian states. Such interactions often led to the exchange of goods, ideas, and religious practices, enhancing the prestige of the Pallava court. Conclusion. The administrative system of the Pallava Empire was a blend of centralized royal authority and localized self-governance. Its emphasis on documentation, village autonomy, and structured revenue systems set an enduring model for subsequent dynasties. The Pallavas succeeded in creating a governance framework that was both efficient and adaptable to the diverse needs of a vast and culturally rich territory. 10. Economy and trade. The economy of the Pallava Empire was robust and multifaceted, characterized by agricultural abundance, thriving trade, both inland and overseas, artisanal industries, and temple-centered economic activities. This economic vibrancy underpinned the Pallavas' political power and enabled their cultural patronage. Agriculture. Agriculture was the economic backbone of the Pallava realm. The fertile plains of Tamilakam, especially around the river basins like the Palar, Pennar, and Kaveri, were ideal for cultivation. Major crops. Rice was the staple crop and grown extensively. Other crops included millet, sugarcane, pulses, cotton, and sesame. Irrigation. The Pallavas invested in irrigation infrastructure. Tanks, called Aris in Tamil, canals and wells were built or renovated to ensure water availability. Inscriptions speak of community-driven irrigation projects and endowments for tank maintenance. Land grants. Royal land grants to Brahmins, Brahmadea, temples, Devadana, and educational institutions helped cultivate new lands and promote agrarian expansion. Land ownership and tenure. Land ownership under the Pallavas followed a hierarchical pattern. Crown lands, directly managed by the state with taxes going to the treasury. Brahmadea lands, granted to Brahmins, exempt from taxes and managed by local sabhas. Devadana lands, donated to temples for religious and community services. Private holdings, held by farmers, nobles, and merchants who paid taxes to the state or temples. Land transactions, boundaries, and ownership rights were documented in inscriptions, often etched on stone or copper plates. Artisanal and industrial activities. The Pallava period saw the growth of specialized crafts and industries, often organized around temple towns and urban centers. Textile industry. Cotton and silk weaving thrived, with Kanchipuram becoming famous for its silk. Metalwork and sculpture. Artisans excelled in bronze casting, jewelry making, and stone carving, producing idols, temple decor, and everyday tools. Pottery and ceramics. Kilns discovered in archaeological sites show a vibrant ceramic tradition. Shipbuilding and carpentry. Coastal regions supported shipbuilding, a crucial industry for maritime trade. Guilds, srinas, played a vital role in organizing artisans, regulating standards, and protecting the interests of craftsmen. Internal trade. Trade within the Pallava kingdom was facilitated by a network of roads, markets, and trading centers. Temples often acted as hubs of economic exchange. Markets, angadis, existed in towns and villages, selling grains, textiles, spices, and tools. Weights and measures. Standardized units facilitated fair trade. Inscriptions mention terms like tulai, weight, and coal measure. Merchant guilds. Organizations like the Dynasty and Manigramam managed commercial operations, resolved disputes, and secured trade routes. Maritime and overseas trade. One of the most remarkable features of the Pallava economy was its engagement in maritime trade with Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, and possibly even China. Major ports like Mahabalipuram, Nagapattinam, and Kavaripattinam served as vital nodes in international trade. Exports included textiles, spices, pepper, cardamom, precious stones, pearls, ivory, and artworks. Imports included horses from Arabia and Central Asia, gold, perfumes, silk, and ceramics. Trade with Southeast Asia. There is epigraphic and archaeological evidence of Pallava contact with kingdoms like Srivijaya and Funan. Pallava influence is visible in temple architecture and inscriptions across Southeast Asia. Currency and monetization. Coins played an important role in commercial transactions. Pallava coins were mostly made of copper and gold and bore symbols like lions, bulls, Nandi, and royal insignia. Designs. Some coins featured the Pallava emblem, which included a lion or a boar. Inscriptions, usually in Sanskrit or Tamil Brahmi script. These coins circulated widely, suggesting a partially monetized economy. Barter, however, continued in rural and agrarian transactions. Temple economy. Temples were not just religious centers, but also powerful economic institutions. Endowments. Kings, nobles, and merchants made land and wealth endowments to temples. These lands were cultivated, and the income was used for temple maintenance, festivals, and social services. Employment. Temples employed a large number of people: priests, dancers, musicians, accountants, and laborers. Banking functions. Temples acted like banks, receiving deposits and providing loans with interest to merchants and farmers. Urbanization and economic hubs. Urban centers like Kanchipuram, Urayur, and Mahabalipuram were major economic and cultural hubs. These cities had bazaars, artisan quarters, merchant streets, and residential areas, indicating advanced urban planning. Conclusion. The Pallava military was a sophisticated institution, balancing traditional forms of warfare with strategic innovation. Its success in repelling northern invasions, subduing rivals, and projecting power overseas was crucial to the Pallava Empire's longevity and prestige. The legacy of Pallava military organization influenced the martial culture of South India for centuries. Military structure and warfare. The military of the Pallava Empire was a key pillar in the establishment, expansion, and protection of its territorial integrity. From defending against northern incursions to launching expeditions against rivals like the Chalukyas, the Pallava military evolved into a formidable force. It played a vital role not only in warfare, but also in the assertion of royal authority and the enforcement of law and order. Structure of the armed forces. The Pallava army was organized into 4 traditional branches of the ancient Indian military: Chaturanga Bala, infantry, Padati. The backbone of the military consisting of foot soldiers equipped with spears, swords, shields, and bows. Cavalry, Turanga, used for rapid attacks and flanking maneuvers. Horses were often imported, especially from Central Asia and Arabia, indicating a reliance on trade for high-quality mounts. Elephants, Gaja. War elephants were used for their psychological impact and brute strength. They carried archers or spearmen and were heavily armored during battles. Chariots, Ratha. Though their use had declined compared to earlier periods, chariots were occasionally used by nobles and high-ranking officers for ceremonial or limited battlefield roles. Military hierarchy and command. The military command structure was hierarchical and professional. Supreme Commander. The king served as the commander-in-chief and often led expeditions in person. His military valor was frequently celebrated in inscriptions and literature. Dandanayaka. Equivalent to a general, the Dandanayaka commanded large divisions of the army. Senapati, another term for military commander, sometimes synonymous with Dandanayaka. Mahadandanayaka, the Grand Commander, possibly overseeing multiple divisions across regions. Local commanders, known as Nayakas, they commanded regional garrisons or led troops from their territories when summoned by the king. Recruitment and training. Recruitment was primarily from peasant and warrior classes. There was also the involvement of tribal groups and mercenaries. Some soldiers were hereditary warriors serving royal households or temples. Regular training and drill practices were conducted in garrison towns and cantonments, Katagam. Weapons and armor. Weapons: soldiers used swords, daggers, bows, arrows, javelins, spears, and maces. Iron and steel weapons were common. Protective gear. Infantrymen had basic armor made of leather or metal plates. Cavalry and elite units had chainmail and helmets. Elephant gear. War elephants were adorned with headgear, tusk blades, and body armor. Fortifications and military architecture. The Pallavas constructed strategic forts, Durga, to defend their territories and act as military bases. These included hill forts built atop hills for natural defense, often with stone walls and watchtowers. Coastal forts, especially important for defending ports from naval attacks. Fortified cities. Kanchipuram and other urban centers had fortified walls, moat systems, and gates. Military engineering also included the construction of siege engines and defensive structures like bastions and turrets. Naval forces. While the Pallava Navy was not as prominent as the Cholas, it served important functions: protecting maritime trade, safeguarding ships, ports, and sea routes; coastal defense, defending against pirate attacks and invasions; diplomatic expeditions. Naval forces escorted emissaries and supported contact with Southeast Asia. Evidence from inscriptions and maritime archaeology suggests that Pallava ships were sturdy, with high hulls and sails suited for long voyages. Campaigns and battles. The Pallavas were involved in numerous conflicts throughout their reign. Against the Chalukyas, one of the most notable military rivalries. The battles between Pulakeshin II of the Chalukyas and Mahendravarman I, followed by Narasimhavarman I, are legendary. Narasimhavarman I defeated Pulakeshin II and sacked the Chalukya capital, Vatapi, Badami. Southern conquests. The Pallavas subdued smaller southern kingdoms like the Calabras and expanded into Tamilakam. Conflicts with the Pandyas and Cheras. Occasional skirmishes and territorial disputes occurred with these neighboring dynasties. Military honors and titles. Victorious generals and valiant soldiers were rewarded with land grants, Velanbagai. Titles such as Veera, Dandanayaka, and Senapati. Hero stones, Virakal or Nadukal, commemorating battlefield deaths. Temples or shrines built in honor of fallen warriors. Military symbols and identity. Insignia. The Pallava lion symbol and conch shell appeared on flags and coins. Victory monuments, the descent of the Ganges bas-relief in Mahabalipuram, is believed to commemorate Pallava martial glory. Conclusion: the Pallava military was a sophisticated institution, balancing traditional forms of warfare with strategic innovation. Its success in repelling northern invasions, subduing rivals, and projecting power overseas was crucial to the Pallava Empire's longevity and prestige. The legacy of Pallava military organization influenced the martial culture of South India for centuries. Art and architecture. The Pallava Empire is celebrated for its monumental contributions to Indian art and architecture. Their patronage laid the foundation for the Dravidian style that would be later perfected by the Cholas. The Pallavas pioneered rock-cut architecture and later transitioned to structural temples, showcasing both aesthetic elegance and architectural innovation. Phases of Pallava architecture. Pallava architecture evolved in two main phases. 1. Mahendravarman phase, early Pallava. Rock-cut temples, cave temples. Dominated by simplicity and structural experimentation, focus on interior space rather than exterior ornamentation. Narasimhavarman phase, later Pallava. Structural temples built of stone blocks. Greater ornamentation, sculptural detail, and architectural complexity. Transition to mature Dravidian temple architecture. Rock-cut architecture. Mahendravarman, Sada 600 and 630 CE, was a pioneer of rock-cut temples which were excavated into hill faces. These temples, known as mandapas, often included pillared halls and sanctums. Examples: Panchapandava Cave Temple, Mahabalipuram; Lalitankura Cave Temple, Trichy; Mahendravadi Cave, dedicated to Narasimha features, simple columns with lion or yali, mythical creature bases; minimal exterior adornment inscriptions in Grantha and Tamil scripts; Rathas, monolithic shrines. Narasimhavarman I, advanced Pallava architecture with the famous Ratha temples at Mahabalipuram, Mamalappuram. Panch Rathas. Named after the Pandavas, these monolithic rock-cut temples are carved from a single granite block. Each Ratha is unique in shape and design. Dharmaraja Ratha, earliest prototype of Dravidian Vimanas temple towers. Bhima, Arjuna, Draupadi, and Nakula Sahadeva Rathas vary in floor plans and ornamentation. Significance: represent the experimentation with forms, transitioning from rock-cut to structural temples. Structural temples. From the time of Rajasimha, Narasimhavarman II, the Pallavas began constructing freestanding stone temples. Shore Temple, Mamalappuram. One of the earliest structural stone temples in South India, twin shrines dedicated to Shiva and Vishnu, declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Features: tiered pyramidal towers, Vimanas, rich sculptural panels depicting mythological scenes, enclosure walls, Nandi bulls and lion motifs. Kailasanatha Temple, Kanchipuram, built by Rajasimha and completed by Mahendravarman II, dedicated to Lord Shiva. Features: a large Vimana with subsidiary shrines, intricate carvings of deities, ganas and floral patterns, unique fresco paintings in some interior chambers. Vaikuntha Perumal Temple, Kanchipuram, built by Nandivarman II, dedicated to Lord Vishnu. Multi-storied sanctum, Tritala Vimana, contains a series of historical panels depicting Pallava court life sculptural art. Pallava sculpture is known for its grace, dynamism, and narrative richness. Themes are drawn from Shaivism, Vaishnavism, and scenes from epics like the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Descent of the Ganges, Arjuna's penance, massive bas-relief at Mamalappuram, depicts either the penance of Arjuna or the descent of the Ganga. Features over 100 figures: gods, sages, animals, and mythical beings, yali pillars and lion bases, distinctive to Pallava temples. Represent mythical creatures with lion-like bodies and bird-like features. Temple inscriptions. Temples contain inscriptions in Sanskrit and Tamil, which record donations and endowments, describe temple rituals and festivals. Praise the ruler's conquests and divine favor, patronage, and artistic legacy. Royal patronage. Kings like Mahendravarman I, Narasimhavarman I, and Rajasimha were personally involved in temple construction and artistic projects. Artist communities. Sculptors and artisans were organized into guilds, and many temples mention their names and origins. Influence on Southeast Asia. Pallava art and architecture influenced temple construction in Southeast Asia, particularly in Cambodia, early Khmer temples. Indonesia, Pallava-style reliefs in Java. Thailand and Vietnam, inscriptions and architectural forms. Conclusion. The Pallava period marked a renaissance in South Indian art and architecture. Their pioneering work in rock-cut and structural temples set the standard for the Dravidian architectural idiom. The visual narrative, iconography, and structural innovation of Pallava monuments continue to inspire awe and scholarly study, marking them as true cultural architects of the South. Breen. Literature and inscriptions. The Pallava era was marked by remarkable literary activity and the flourishing of inscriptions that served as both administrative records and vehicles of cultural expression. The Pallava kings were patrons of learning, arts, and languages, fostering an environment that enabled the growth of both Sanskrit and Tamil literature. Inscriptions from this period provide deep insights into political history, religion, language, and socio-economic life. Languages used. Sanskrit, used primarily for royal eulogies, prashastis, religious dedications, and literary compositions, seen as the language of prestige and pan-Indian culture. Tamil, used in administrative records, land grants, and local communications. Became more prominent during the later Pallava period Grantha script, a script developed by the Pallavas to write Sanskrit in the Tamil region, used widely in inscriptions. Tamil Brahmi and early Vatalutu, occasionally used in inscriptions alongside Grantha Pallava contributions to literature. Mahendravarman I, a king scholar who authored the famous Sanskrit play Matavilasa Prahasana, The Farce of Drunken Sport, a satirical drama lampooning religious hypocrisy and social pretensions, encouraged creative expression and theatrical art court, scholars and poets. The Pallava courts attracted scholars from across India and abroad, patronized poets, dramatists, grammarians, and philosophers. Tamil literature under Pallavas. The Pallava period witnessed a resurgence in Tamil literature, following the Kalabra interregnum. Many devotional bhakti hymns by Shaiva Nayanmars and Vaishnava Alvars were composed during this time. These compositions laid the foundation for the Tamil bhakti movement, bhakti literature. The Pallavas actively supported the bhakti saints. Nayanmars, Shaiva poet saints like Appar, Sambandar, and Sundarar. Alvars, Vaishnava poet saints such as Periyalvar, Namalvar, and Andal. Their hymns emphasized devotion over ritual and caste, and were often sung in temples. These works later formed the canon of Shaiva and Vaishnava religious literature inscriptions as literary and historical sources. Thousands of Pallava inscriptions survive in stone and copper plates. Found in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and even Southeast Asia types of inscriptions. Royal prashastis, eulogies composed in ornate Sanskrit, narrate the genealogy, conquests, and divine favor of the king land grants. Issued to Brahmins, temples, and monasteries. Recorded in Tamil or Sanskrit, often with elaborate introductions, temple records. Detailed donations, rituals, festivals, and the roles of temple officials. Administrative inscriptions. Mention tax exemptions, trade regulations, and civic grants. Important inscriptions, Kanchipuram inscriptions. Numerous inscriptions on temple walls from the reigns of Mahendravarman, Narasimhavarman, and Rajasimha Kudimiyanmalai inscription. Earliest example of musical notation in Indian inscriptions, Mandagapattu inscription, refers to the temple built by Mahendravarman Thoram as without use of bricks, timber, metal, or mortar, marking the beginning of rock-cut architecture copper plate charters. The Velurpalayam plates of Nandivarman III. The Bahar plates and Tandantatam plates detail royal endowments and administrative structures. Education and literary institutions. Pallava kings supported learning centers. Kanchipuram, known as the City of Thousand Temples and a major center of Vedic, Buddhist, and Jain learning. Vikramashila and Nalanda had connections with Kanchi scholars. Schools associated with temples educated students in grammar, philosophy, astronomy, and medicine, religious texts and commentaries. Pallava scholars wrote commentaries on Vedic texts and Dharma Shastra. Temples served as libraries housing palm leaf manuscripts, international literary influence. Pallava script and language spread to Southeast Asia. Inscriptions found in Cambodia, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand in Pallava Grantha script influenced the development of local scripts and literary traditions. Conclusion: the literary and epigraphic legacy of the Pallava Empire is a testament to its intellectual vibrancy and cultural depth. The blending of Sanskrit and Tamil, the rise of Bhakti poetry, and the wealth of inscriptions provide an enduring window into a dynamic civilization that valued both artistic expression and scholarly rigor. 14. Science, technology, and medicine. The Pallava period, though primarily known for its contributions to art and architecture, also witnessed notable developments in science, technology, and medicine. These advances were often closely tied to temple institutions and educational centers, which served as hubs for scientific inquiry and practical knowledge. Astronomy and mathematics. Temple astronomy. Temples functioned as astronomical observatories where priests and scholars calculated celestial movements for determining auspicious times and dates. The Pallavas constructed gnomons and used shadow measurements for calendrical calculations. Use of panchangas, almanacs, produced using calculations of lunar and solar movements, helped regulate festivals, rituals, and agricultural activities. Mathematics. Inscriptions reveal an understanding of geometry, especially in temple construction and layout. Use of proportional measurement systems and mathematical calculations in architecture. Engineering and construction technology. Rock cut technology. The Pallavas pioneered rock cut engineering, excavating monolithic temples and cave sanctuaries with precision tools, required detailed knowledge of geology and structural integrity. Structural engineering. Transition from cave temples to structural temples involved advanced stone masonry techniques, use of interlocking stones, corbelled domes, and granite mortising. Hydraulic engineering. Evidence of irrigation systems including tanks, coulams, canals, and sluices. Temple inscriptions mention construction and maintenance of water reservoirs. Medicine and health sciences. Ayurveda flourished under the patronage of Pallava rulers and temple institutions. Temples had associated Ayurvedic gardens, vanams, with medicinal herbs. Inscriptions refer to grants for physicians, Vaidya, and medicines hospitals, Arogyasalas. Some temples had attached medical centers to treat monks and pilgrims. Provision of medicines, oils, and dietary regulations recorded in temple inscriptions. Siddha medicine. Indigenous to Tamil regions, Siddha medicine saw patronage during the Pallava era, focused on herbal remedies, minerals, and yoga-based treatments. Metallurgy and tools. Metallurgical skills used in making idols, temple bells, and ritual implements. Bronze casting, lost wax method was known and practiced tools for sculpture and construction. Stone chisels, hammers, iron drills, and polishing tools. Precision evident in the fine detailing of temple reliefs and bas-reliefs. Botany and agriculture. Agricultural manuals and temple records indicate awareness of crop rotation, soil quality, and fertilization methods. Pest control using natural substances. Sacred groves and temple gardens. Cultivation of medicinal and aromatic plants. Gardens served both ritual and medicinal functions. Naval and maritime technology. Shipbuilding. Pallava inscriptions and Southeast Asian accounts mention sea voyages and maritime trade. Ports like Mahabalipuram were hubs of ship construction. Knowledge of navigation, tide movements, and monsoonal patterns. Trade technology. Standardized weights and measures. Use of seals and inscriptions for labeling goods. Educational institutions and scientific transmission. Centers of learning in Kanchipuram and other cities offered instruction in various disciplines including logic, grammar, medicine, and astronomy. Transmission to Southeast Asia. Pallava script and scientific knowledge spread through trade and cultural exchanges. Influenced local practices in Cambodia, Java, and Vietnam. Inscriptions and scientific knowledge. Many inscriptions include data on rainfall, agricultural practices, and astronomical phenomena. Serve as indirect records of scientific understanding. Conclusion: the scientific and technological advancements of the Pallava period, though not as extensively documented as their art and architecture, reveal a deep engagement with practical knowledge systems. Their integration of science into temple life and daily governance laid a foundation that would be built upon by later South Indian dynasties. 15. Society and daily life. The society of the Pallava period was complex, hierarchical, and deeply rooted in tradition. Yet it also exhibited elements of dynamism through trade, cultural exchange, and religious movements. Society was structured around Varna, caste, and Jati, subcaste divisions, but various segments interacted in urban, rural, and temple-based settings that shaped everyday life. Social structure, Varna system. Society was broadly divided into Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. Brahmins held influential positions in temples, education, and administration. Kshatriyas included the ruling class and military elites. Vaishyas were involved in trade, agriculture, and business. Shudras and other working castes performed essential services. Jati system. Subcastes based on occupation. Artisans, weavers, potters, and blacksmiths formed organized guilds. Women in society. Women were respected within family and religious spheres. Some received education in music and temple arts. Queens and royal women occasionally issued inscriptions or made temple donations. Slavery and servitude. Certain inscriptions refer to bonded labor and hereditary service obligations to temples or landlords. Urban and rural life. Cities. Major urban centers included Kanchipuram, Mahabalipuram, Urayur, and Kavarapakam. Cities had defined zones for administration, markets, residential quarters, and temples. Streets were often laid out geometrically with drainage systems. Villages, backbone of the economy, organized into settlements with communal grazing lands, tanks, and farmlands. Village assemblies, sabhas, managed local governance occupations and guilds. Occupational groups formed guilds, sranas, that regulated wages, training, and quality control. Notable professions included sculptors and stonemasons, goldsmiths and blacksmiths, potters, weavers, and carpenters. Inscriptions mention guilds donating to temples and participating in local governance, food, and cuisine. Staple foods, rice, millet, pulses. Accompaniments, tamarind, coconut, curry leaves, jaggery, and spices. Drinks, buttermilk, palm wine, and medicinal decoctions. Dining etiquette, mostly vegetarian. Meals eaten with hands, often seated on the floor, clothing and ornaments. Men, dhoti-style lower garments, turbans, angavastra, shoulder cloth. Women, saris draped in regional styles adorned with jewelry. Jewelry, gold, pearls, and semi-precious stones used in earrings, bangles, anklets, and necklaces. Cosmetics, use of sandal paste, turmeric, and herbal hair oils. Housing and architecture. Rural homes, thatch-roofed mud huts or wooden structures. Urban houses, brick houses with tiled roofs, courtyards, and water storage systems. Temples served as spiritual, educational, and social centers. Festivals and entertainment. Festivals linked to agricultural cycles, temple rituals, and mythological events. Celebrations included processions, music, and communal feasts. Performing arts. Music, vocal and instrumental. Dance and drama flourished. Use of instruments like veena, mridangam, and flute. Dance forms influenced later Bharatanatyam traditions. Sports and games. Board games, precursors to modern chess. Martial training and wrestling. Hunting and archery among elites, religious and ethical life. Religion shaped everyday conduct through rituals, dietary rules, and festivals. Ethical codes derived from Dharma shastras and local customs. Temples promoted community welfare and ethical behavior through discourses, civic life, and administration. Urban councils and village assemblies provided civic governance. Local disputes resolved through sabhas and temple councils. Inscriptions detail civic projects like roads, tanks, and rest houses. Education and literacy. Brahmin households and temple schools provided primary education. Advanced learning in grammar, logic, medicine, and astronomy offered at religious institutions. Literacy levels varied by caste and occupation, but merchant classes, often well-educated artisan and merchant class, highly respected and economically influential, sponsored temples, festivals, and charitable works, played a key role in trade and cultural exchange, especially with Southeast Asia. Conclusion. Pallava society was both hierarchical and interconnected, shaped by religion, occupation, and regional identity. Despite the rigid caste system, everyday life thrived through dynamic village communities, flourishing cities, vibrant cultural expressions, and robust local governance, offering a rich mosaic of social diversity and harmony. 16. Religion and philosophy. The Pallava Empire was a crucible of religious and philosophical development, fostering a vibrant spiritual culture that included Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism. While the Pallava kings were predominantly Shaivites, their patronage extended to multiple sects, reflecting a tolerant and inclusive religious atmosphere. This period also saw the crystallization of philosophical ideas, temple rituals, and devotional movements that left a lasting impact on South Indian spiritual life. Religious diversity, Hinduism, dominant religion during Pallava rule, patronized by royal dynasties, especially Shaivism and Vaishnavism. Shaivism, strongly supported by the Pallava monarchs, particularly Mahendravarman I and Narasimhavarman II, temples dedicated to Shiva proliferated, including rock-cut and structural temples. Bhakti saints like Apar, Sambandar, and Sundarar spread Shaiva devotionalism. Vaishnavism gained prominence in parallel with Shaivism. The Alvar saints such as Namalvar and Andal composed hymns in praise of Vishnu. Temples like the Vaikuntha Perumal temple in Kanchipuram signify royal patronage. Shaktism, worship of the Divine Mother as Durga and other forms. Some temples and sculptures depict goddess worship. Jainism continued to be practiced, especially among merchant and artisan classes. Jain caves and inscriptions exist from the Pallava period. Jain ascetics were respected and supported by segments of the elite Buddhism. Buddhism had waned in prominence but continued to survive in pockets. Kanchipuram remained an important center of Buddhist learning. Temple as a religious institution. Role of temples: centers of worship, education, and community life. House not only deities but also schools, libraries, and hospitals. Ritual practices: daily pujas, festivals, and processions regulated by agamic traditions. Temples employed priests, musicians, dancers, and other staff. Pilgrimage sites: Kanchipuram and Tiruvannamalai became major pilgrimage destinations. Sacred rivers and tanks associated with purificatory rituals. Philosophical developments: Shaiva philosophy, emphasis on the unity of the soul. Atma with Shiva, ideas rooted in the Agamas and early Shaiva Siddhanta. Vaishnava philosophy, focused on surrender, prapatti, and the grace of Vishnu, influenced later schools like Vishishtadvaita of Ramanuja Bhakti movement, emerged as a key religious trend. Emphasized personal devotion, singing hymns, and rejecting caste barriers created a spiritual revolution that democratized religion. Ascetic traditions: Jain and Shaiva ascetics engaged in meditation, celibacy, and scriptural study. Monasteries provided shelter and education to disciples, philosophical texts and commentaries. Pallava period scholars wrote treatises on Dharma, metaphysics, and logic. Sanskrit and Tamil commentaries on Vedic and agamic texts. Temples preserved palm leaf manuscripts and oral traditions. Religious art and iconography. Temples richly decorated with deities and mythological themes. Shiva as Nataraja, cosmic dancer, became a prominent motif. Depictions of Vishnu in various avatars. Presence of Jain and Buddhist iconography in cave temples. Tolerant religious policy. Pallava rulers granted land and privileges to multiple religious groups. Inscriptions show donations to Shaiva, Vaishnava, Jain, and Buddhist institutions. Religious tolerance contributed to the flourishing of diverse philosophies. Connection to Southeast Asia. Pallava religious ideas spread through maritime trade and cultural exchange. Temples in Cambodia, Java, and Vietnam show Pallava influence in both architecture and religious themes. Conclusion: the religious and philosophical life of the Pallava Empire reflected its cultural sophistication and spiritual pluralism. By promoting temple building, encouraging devotional literature, and supporting multiple traditions, the Pallavas laid the groundwork for South India's enduring religious and philosophical landscape. 17. Trade and economic relations. The Pallava Empire's economy was a multifaceted system combining agriculture, trade, taxation, and craft production. It was well integrated with regional and transoceanic trade networks, which brought wealth, foreign goods, and cultural exchanges into the heart of South India. The empire's strategic coastal position, especially through ports like Mahabalipuram, enabled flourishing maritime commerce with Southeast Asia and beyond. Agriculture and land use, agrarian economy. Agriculture was the economic backbone with crops like rice, millet, sugarcane, and pulses. Extensive use of irrigation through tanks, eras, canals, and sluices. Land classification. Inscriptions mention different types of land: wetland, Nancy, dry land, Punsi, forest land, and temple-owned land. Tax records indicate productivity levels in crops, cultivated irrigation projects. Kings and local communities invested in tank building and canal dredging. Temples also acted as managers of irrigation systems, crafts and industries. Artisanal production. Skilled craftsmen produced textiles, jewelry, metalware, and sculpture. Guilds, Srinas, managed quality control, apprenticeship and distribution. Stone sculpture and architecture flourished under royal patronage. Temples were major employers of masons, sculptors, and artisans. Textile production. Cotton and silk weaving centers existed in both urban and rural settings. Inscriptions refer to cloth merchants and weaver communities. Internal trade, markets, and gadis. Urban markets sold agricultural products, spices, ornaments, and textiles. Weekly markets and fairs took place in temple towns and crossroads. Road networks. Well-maintained roads connected trade routes between inland and coastal areas. Caravans transported goods using oxen and carts. Coinage and currency. Pallava coins were made of gold, silver, and copper. Featured symbols like the lion, bull, and Sanskrit legends, used in commercial transactions and temple endowments. Maritime trade, ports and sea routes. Mahabalipuram, Nagapattinam, and Kavirapattinam were key ports. Sea routes connected Tamil coast with Sri Lanka, Southeast Asia, and China. Export goods. Spices, cotton textiles, precious stones, pearls, and ivory. Import goods. Horses, gold, luxury goods, glassware, and Chinese ceramics. Shipbuilding. Indigenous expertise in constructing seaworthy vessels supported by merchant guilds and port authorities. Foreign relations and trade diplomacy. Trade with Southeast Asia. Evidence from inscriptions and foreign records, like those in Cambodia and Java. Exchange of goods, religious ideas, and cultural motifs. Trade missions and embassies. Diplomats and merchants from the Pallava court visited foreign shores. Foreign traders and envoys were hosted at Pallava ports and cities. Merchant guilds, powerful commercial bodies. Guilds such as Managramam and Ayavola played dominant roles in inland and overseas trade, owned ships, warehouses, and controlled pricing policies. Temple patronage. Guilds donated to temple construction and maintenance. Endowed educational and charitable institutions. Taxation and revenue system. Land revenue, major source of income. Collected in kind and cash. Commercial taxes. Levied on goods in transit. Market stalls, port activities. Tax exemptions granted to temples and select guilds. Temple as economic unit. Temples owned lands, employed labor, and served as banking institutions. Economic sustainability. The integration of agriculture, trade, and religious institutions created a resilient economic system. Community participation and guild management ensured efficient functioning. Conclusion: the Pallava Empire's economic strength lay in its ability to combine local agricultural productivity with active engagement in global trade. Merchant guilds, temple institutions, and royal infrastructure contributed to a flourishing economy that connected South India with a broader transoceanic world. 18. Art and architecture. Advanced studies. The Pallava Empire is renowned for its pioneering contributions to Indian art and architecture, particularly during the 6th to 9th centuries CE. The evolution from rock-cut to structural temples during their reign marked a significant transition in South Indian architectural history. This section delves deeply into the advanced aesthetics, iconography, styles, and influences that define the Pallava artistic legacy. Phases of Pallava architecture. Mahendra style, early rock-cut phase. Associated with Mahendravarman I, c. 600-630 CE, characterized by cave temples carved into hillsides, pillared halls with lion-based columns. Examples: cave temples at Mandagapattu, Mahendravadi, Valam. Mamala style, later rock-cut phase. Under Narasimhavarman I, c. 630-668 CE, monumental bas-reliefs and freestanding monolithic shrines. The 5 rathas at Mahabalipuram, Pancharathas, represent this style. Arjuna's Penance, a massive sculptural panel carved into granite rock. Rajasima style, structural temples phase. Developed during the reign of Narasimhavarman II, Rajasimha, c. 700-728 CE. Introduction of structural stone temples replacing rock-cut forms. Emphasis on vertical elevation, vimanas, and ornate carving. Example, Kailasanatha Temple at Kanchipuram. Nandavarman style, refinement and expansion. Later refinement and standardization of the temple structure. influenced by emerging Chola architectural features. Temples had large courtyards and multiple shrines, key architectural features. Vimana, superstructure. Multi-tiered tower above the sanctum, Garbhagriha, decorated with miniature shrines and pilasters. Mandapa, hall, entrance or assembly halls with sculpted columns, supported religious discourses and public gatherings. Gopuram, gateway tower. Developed more fully in later Pallava and early Chola period sculptural art. Emphasis on grace, fluidity, and expressive poses. Deities, dancers, mythical animals, and royal portraits. Rich narrative panels from epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata iconography. Shiva as Nataraja, Somaskanda, with Parvati and Skanda. Vishnu in reclining, Anantasayana, and standing, Vaikuntha forms. Depictions of Durga, Ganesha, Brahma, Lakshmi, Saraswati temple towns and complexes. Kanchipuram, capital and major temple center. Kailasanatha Temple, early structural temple with stucco decorations. Vaikuntha Perumal Temple, innovative multi-storied structure. Mahabalipuram, seaside temple town, UNESCO World Heritage Site. Shore Temple, combination of two shrines facing the sea. Pancharathas, monolithic temples resembling chariots. Construction techniques, use of granite and sandstone blocks, mastery in rock carving and surface polishing, engineering techniques for drainage, weight distribution and durability, patronage and artisanship, kings directly involved in commissioning temples and inscriptions, artisans and architects held in high esteem. Inscriptions record names of sculptors and architects such as Atyantakama. Stylistic influence on later dynasties, served as foundational inspiration for Chola and Vijayanagara architecture. Techniques and iconographic themes spread to Southeast Asia, notably in Cambodia, Angkor, Java, Borobudur, and Vietnam, Cham temples. Religious and cultural functions. Temples served not only as religious centers but also as hubs of education, cultural events, music and dance. Socio-political assemblies, painting and mural art. Limited evidence survives, but murals in the Kailasanatha temple suggest vibrant wall painting traditions. Natural dyes and fresco-like techniques were used. Legacy and preservation. Many Pallava temples are preserved by the Archaeological Survey of India, studied globally for their architectural innovation and aesthetic brilliance. Conclusion: the Pallava era was a golden age of South Indian art and architecture. Their innovations laid the aesthetic and structural foundation for later temple-building traditions across India and Southeast Asia. The artistic genius of the Pallava sculptors continues to inspire admiration and scholarly study worldwide. 19. Legacy and historical impact. The Pallava Empire left a lasting legacy that profoundly influenced South Indian history, culture, art, language, and polity. Their achievements in governance, architecture, religion, and overseas cultural exchange established foundational traditions that were built upon by successive dynasties. The Pallavas' multifaceted contributions continue to shape the identity and heritage of Tamil Nadu and the broader Indian subcontinent. Cultural and artistic legacy, architectural innovation, transition from rock-cut to structural temples, blueprint for Chola, Pandya and Vijayanagara architectural developments, global recognition of monuments like those at Mahabalipuram, UNESCO World Heritage Site, sculptural excellence, refined iconography, and narrative bas-reliefs. Aesthetic styles adopted in later periods in abroad, Southeast Asia, literature and language, promotion of Tamil and Sanskrit as literary and administrative languages, patronage to poets, scholars, and religious commentators, helped establish Tamil as a classical language of enduring value. Religious contributions. Bhakti movement encouraged devotional literature and temple-centered worship, laid the foundation for future Hindu devotional movements. Religious pluralism fostered a syncretic religious atmosphere, accommodating Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Jainism, and Buddhism, influenced the tolerant religious policies of future dynasties. Political and administrative legacy. Governance model, bureaucratic hierarchy and administrative divisions replicated by later states. Emphasis on local self-governance, seen in village assemblies and temple committees. Feudal structures. Systems of land grants, vassalage, and temple-based economy continued in Chola and Vijayanagara. Times educational and intellectual contributions. Centers of learning. Kanchipuram, developed as a major center of Vedic, Jain, Buddhist, and Tamil learning, influenced the growth of temple schools and mathas, monastic centers, philosophy and theology, facilitated the development of Shaiva Siddhanta, early Vaishnava theology, contributed to the corpus of South Indian agamic and devotional texts' international impact, cultural diffusion, Pallava influence seen in Southeast Asian temples and inscriptions, e.g. Cambodia, Vietnam, Java, transmission of Indian religious and artistic traditions via trade and diplomacy, scripts and languages. Pallava Grantha script was the progenitor of several Southeast Asian scripts, e.g. Khmer, Thai, Javanese, played a vital role in the Indianization of Southeast Asia, enduring historical reputation. Monuments and heritage sites, preserved by Indian and international heritage organizations, popular pilgrimage and tourist destinations, academic interest, continues to be a subject of scholarly research in history, archaeology, and art history, cited as a key phase in the development of South Indian civilization public memory, revered in Tamil cultural narratives, honored in Indian school curricula and public commemorations. Conclusion: the Pallava Empire's legacy is not confined to its historical era. It is a living presence in the temples, languages, philosophies, and cultural practices of South India and beyond. As cultural innovators and political pioneers, the Pallavas laid enduring foundations that shaped the trajectory of Indian and Southeast Asian history. 20. Conclusion and summary. The Pallava Empire, spanning from the 3rd to the 9th centuries CE, stands as a cornerstone in the historical and cultural development of South India. This expansive study has traced the rise, zenith, and eventual decline of the Pallava dynasty, while also exploring the rich legacy they left behind. From governance and administration to art, architecture, religion, and international diplomacy, the Pallavas were pioneers in forging a distinctive South Indian identity. Key takeaways, foundations, and origins. The Pallavas emerged during a time of transition, possibly as feudatories of the Satavahanas, eventually establishing sovereignty over northern Tamil Nadu and southern Andhra Pradesh. Political development. Strong rulers like Mahendravarman I and Narasimhavarman I expanded the empire through strategic warfare and diplomacy, notably resisting the Chalukyas and Kalabras. Administrative framework. The Pallavas implemented efficient governance with well-defined bureaucratic systems, tax regulations, and local self-administration. Religion and culture. They fostered a climate of religious tolerance and pluralism, supporting Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Jainism, and Buddhism, thereby encouraging a diverse cultural fabric. Artistic and architectural innovation. Their legacy is best preserved in their temple architecture, transitioning from rock-cut to structural temples, and in their contributions to Indian sculptural and iconographic traditions. Language and literature. They promoted both Tamil and Sanskrit, contributing to the evolution of Tamil classical literature and laying the groundwork for South Indian literary traditions. Economic and international engagement. Through agriculture, internal and overseas trade, the Pallavas built a prosperous economy and extended India's cultural reach into Southeast Asia. Enduring legacy. The Pallavas served as the precursors to later empires like the Cholas, Pandyas, and Vijayanagara. Their influence endures in the monumental architecture, administrative practices, and religious institutions of Tamil Nadu and across Asia. Final reflection. The Pallava Empire exemplifies a golden age in early medieval South Indian history. Their visionary kingship, cultural patronage, and maritime diplomacy crafted a civilization that not only thrived in its own time, but also sowed the seeds for a pan-Asian cultural exchange. Their contribution is integral to the historical narrative of India and continues to resonate through the living heritage of the Tamil people and their diasporas. This detailed study offers a comprehensive perspective on one of the most influential empires in Indian history, serving as both a tribute and a resource for further exploration of South Indian civilization.